Brahmacharaka Dipati Sahampati Katanjali Viramaya Jata Santida Sata Parajagajatika Desetu Dhamma Anukam Pimam Paja. Do I bow again? I can't
You
do
do.
that. Okay, sorry.
You bow.
I just...
We're the bowing tradition.
yeah.
Bhikkhu Bodhi visited us at Amaravati, and the poor man was so confused. He said, "When do you guys bow? Now do I have to bow now?" Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So, did you hear that fluttering sound outside? Out there? Yeah. That's called a snipe. And a snipe is the shape of a woodcock. Woodcock is quite a short, round little guy with a long, long beak and long legs. And it's an interesting bird because it's now marking out its territory because it's nesting season. And so what it's doing, it's flying in a circle around this bay, very high up. And while it's flying in a circle, it's climbing and diving, climbing and diving, climbing and in a circle. And the sound that you hear, the whistling sound, is its wings. So its wings have a little whistling. And so it's marking the territory, it's a male. It's marking the territory, and they're very hard to spot because they're so high up. And it's an incredible, you think in terms of biology, it's an incredible investment in energy. Because you heard how often, if you heard it, it was there a lot, wasn't it? So all the times, it's climbing, and then, like one another. So next time you hear it, it's a snipe. Problem now that I've said it, tomorrow evening, you're going to be listening for the snipe, and you're going to be distracted. Your mind will want to go out there. Where's the snipe? Okay, it's a trick. You hear it in the mornings too. So I've been playing with that theme, because it's very, very important to understand that, well, I was thinking of the sign here, stay a while. Back here, stay a while, yeah.
Oh, yes.
What might that mean in terms of meditation? Well, stay a while at home rather than going out. Stay a while as witness rather than as ego participant in life. Stay a while as silent knowing, stay a while as background. And it's I really like that analogy of foreground and background. So listening to the snipe, the foreground is quite delightful. Because I like birding and it's interesting, but then I can say, but I can also rest. Just allow that sound to be there, and I can sense the background too. If we don't have the background, if we don't have a way of resting the mind, then we're always just trying to engage with sense experience to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. We need to engage with sense experience. So Santosa and Ben fixed the water filter. So you need to, I think, or is it half broken still? In progress.
It's done.
It's done.
Well done.
Well done, okay. So you need to engage with the world. It's not like we're just going to be sort of passively stupid. Yeah. But the thing is, we are so engaged with the world that we forget there is this beautiful silence in the back of consciousness. And of course, we now have very interesting ways of going out, and that's devices. These devices are so clever at getting our attention. And it's not immoral. It's not immoral at all, but it is not renunciant, right? It's not renunciant. So to stay home with the way things are as witness I think it's becoming increasingly more difficult in society, because society is so distracted in these various ways. That's why we're very fortunate to be here and to have this silence and to actually learn to listen to silence. So we have the natural environment, which is a conditioned environmental silence, and learn to listen. But it's also pointing back to your own silence, to your own stillness. And that's the refuge of the awakened mind. So in terms of meditation, that's what I'm encouraging in ways that you have to really explore yourself. You get the principle. Once you get the principle, you can start exploring it. So for some people, anapanasati just does not work because it's too much forcing, me trying to get a result. Doesn't work. For some people it works great because they can abide. The breath is the breath. Long breath, fine. Short breath, fine. Labored breath, fine. No problem. Some people get caught up into control. So if anapanasati doesn't work for you, it's not your fault. It's just you got to put on a different pair of shoes. It's not your shoe type or shoe size. So you do have to have on one hand, a willingness to take the meditation themes that you're offered and try them out and work with them for a period of time. But if they don't work, they don't work. That's fine, because there's so many ways you can come to the silence of the mind. But if you understand the principle is not producing a kind of refined state of mind, that's not what we're doing. It can happen, but that's not what we're doing, because anything you produce will die, because it's structured, it's a sankhara. So we're trying to discover that which is unstructured. So the word sankata comes from sankhara, it's structured, compounded, and asankata, it's not structured. It's another way we talk about nibbana, or the freedom of the mind. And the way so the retreat is a really beautiful opportunity to develop this capacity of witnessing change. Because in witnessing change, rather than trying to change something, you're taken to the background. So witnessing or awareness of change is what Ajahn Chah was always teaching. He said, "Mine, it's uncertain, it's uncertain, it's uncertain." And when you actually do that, your mind always rests in the background. When you're in the foreground, like let's say, what happens? Let's say you feel that you have an ideal. Let's say you have an ideal, and your ideal is that you should not be judgmental. Sounds good. The ideal is that you should have metta all the time for everyone. Impossible, of course, but sounds good. And so you want to be a good Buddhist. And you want to love everyone all the time. Good luck. Because you forget that you're human, right? And that's actually impossible. But no, that's okay. Your mind, your thinking mind, can create an ideal. So it creates this ideal. And then you find that you're actually very judgmental. Sometimes it's necessary because that's your work demands that. But you have a highly honed critical faculty because your critical faculty has been developed for work, and you find you're quite judgmental. So you're looking at a person, too big, too small, too fast, too slow. You're looking at yourself, too big, too fast, too slow. And you look at, that's very judgmental. May all beings be well, may all beings be well, may all beings be well. And you suppress the judging mind. I shouldn't be so judgmental. I'm a terrible person, I shouldn't be so judgmental. But notice what's going on. You're always preoccupied with conditions. On one hand, you're judgmental. On the other hand, you're judgmental that you shouldn't be judgmental. You're just preoccupied with the same garbage. And it seems right. It seems, yes, I'm a terrible person. Or you're cynical, or you're critical, or you're jealous, or whatever. This is not who you really are. But there are conditions that we have as human beings. We feel resentful or jealous, or things that you don't want to advertise to everyone. And then, because of idealism, you get more preoccupied with it by even maybe doing metta bhavana. Now that's okay. It's okay to do metta bhavana, but if it is to get rid of judgment or jealousy, you're always just preoccupied. But you never step back. But in witnessing, you say, jealousy feels this way. It's not a judgment. If you're pursuing jealousy and you're now, actively thinking of how to destroy the person, then I suggest you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't even be here. I don't think anyone like that would be here because they'd be so egotistical, right? So most of us, I assume 100% of us, don't want jealousy. Who wants it? It's ugly. It's unpleasant. And so then we think, well, I have to fix this jealousy thing. You have to do something about it, yeah, but what actually works? What actually works? Well, I suggest that what works is anicca. When jealousy arises, as an example, or resentment, or whatever it might be, anger, when it arises in the mind, it arises from causes and conditions. You don't say in the morning, I think I'll be jealous this afternoon. Got nothing else to do. You don't do that, right? Jealousy arises because of causes and conditions. So it's birth. So its natural evolution would be that there would be the death or the cessation of jealousy. Now, how does cessation take place? When you allow it to be just as it is. When you know it as a sankhara, as an object, and don't attach to it. So the ideas of witnessing change are then, first of all, recognize, it feels this way, jealousy feels this way. Now that is counter to your desire mind. Your desire mind does not want this. So the problem is not so much the jealousy, it's the desire not to have the jealousy. It's the desire to have a certain state of mind and not this. And what we tend not to diagnose the problem properly. We think it's the jealousy, and then we have this desire to get rid of the jealousy from our idealism because we're good people, right? And then we struggle with the jealousy. But actually, the problem is the desire, and that's what creates the preoccupation. So in the use of the Four Noble Truths, and the Four Noble Truths isn't just a belief, it's a pragmatic tool that you need to keep employing. So the first noble truth, there's dukkha, there's suffering, and the second noble truth, there's a cause. So with jealousy, as an example, or resentment, or I don't really feel jealousy, by the way, but I got other stuff, don't worry. But as a kind of example, then if you're using the Four Noble Truths and an unpleasant mood, such as jealousy, arises, you have to diagnose it. What's the problem? Is it this unpleasant mood, or is it that my desire not to have this unpleasant mood? And if you don't see that the problem is desire, then you won't really solve it. You won't take it to the cessation of desire. But if you see the problem is desire and attachment to desire, then when the unpleasant emotion comes up, you say, this is unpleasant. That's Vedana. It's just unpleasant, Vedana. And you don't take it to tanha. You don't take it to upadana. You don't take it to rebirth. And then you have to be very patient. Just witnessing, jealousy feels this way. I shouldn't be jealous. I should not. No. Jealousy feels this way. So you don't pick up the ahankara mimankara. You don't pick up the I making, my making. You just know it as it is. And then you bear witness to it. And that's why you have to trust in awareness. Right? We don't usually trust in awareness. We trust in desire, actually. Inadvertently. It's not a bad desire. It's not like you want to rob a bank. Not that. So, diagnosing the problem is you take up the Four Noble Truths and say, okay, it feels like this. What's the problem? I don't want it. I want something else. It's the wanting. When you witness the wanting, then the negative emotion will still be there, but you are now the witness of change. And you're back home. You're back home. Even though the sense experience, the emotion experience is unpleasant. You're no longer looking for the pleasant. That's not the program. Nibbana is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. I mean, it must be pretty cool, yeah. But it's not in the usual way of sense experience. And in fact, allowing things to cease takes you to the silence of the mind. So my insight around that was with fear. And I always talk about this because my kind of predominant mental tone was shyness, anxiety, and fear. It's a really predominant sense of self would come from those energies. And it took me some time to realize it wasn't the fear or the self-consciousness or the shyness that was a problem. It was the desire not to have those. Now, for some reason, in childhood or whatever, I picked up that kind of personality type. I can't change that. So that personality type and the nervous system that operated that way then create the persona that entered into monasticism. Can't change that, right? And then in monasticism, now I could actually witness it because I didn't have to, I could just be a monk, which is great. So if you're afraid, give the Dhamma talk. If you're not afraid, give the Dhamma talk. If you want to give the Dhamma talk, give the Dhamma talk. If you're petrified of giving the Dhamma talk, give the Dhamma talk. You get the picture. And that's where I began to look at fear. Once I realized that the problem was not the fear itself, that was programmed for various reasons I didn't really understand. And that just came up. It was triggered by situations. Other monks are really cool. I said, really? You're not afraid? Yeah, what's the problem? Yeah, what's the problem? I'm petrified. So it's not my fault. You could blame me. You say, Viradhammo, you're a monk. You don't have to be afraid. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It works the way it works. It operates the way it operates. So then I began to realize at some point when fear arose, that it was a good thing because it was purification. Now the triggers are in place for fear to arise, but it wasn't biological fear. It wasn't like the bear was coming at me or some Russian airplane or something like that. It was just conditioning. So then the situations that where fear arose, self-consciousness arose, shyness arose, as I began to witness them, they began to run their course. And that's the vipaka karma. That's the resultant karma of my life. Not some past life where I was a snipe and or something like that. Just this life, the way the mind gets conditioned, the way it gets conditioned. So this was the resultant karma of my childhood or my culture or being a refugee or something like that. And so that had a certain momentum that I couldn't do anything about. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't unpleasant. So it had a momentum. And it arose many, many, many times over many, many years. But that was just nature. That was the Dhamma of this conditioned mind. And it took a long time to see that. And then as I understood that, of course, Lompo Sumedho was very, very helpful. He said, look at the desire. Don't worry about the mood. Look at the desire not to have the mood. And then it became obvious that what I needed to do was welcome the fear. Counterintuitive. But yes, obviously I need to welcome it because I'm trying to get rid of it. Then I put in effort, now not out of idealism, that I should be courageous and all that. Not out of idealism, but from insight. Right understanding. Right understanding is insight understanding. It's not just academic understanding. So this is my condition problem, and I struggle with it, and I try to get rid of it, and I do metta bhavana to everyone in the world. I'm still afraid. And I do it twice, and I'm still afraid. All beings, may they be happy. No, I don't want to talk. So that wasn't insight. That was just dogma. You should do, if you have fear, you should do metta bhavana. It kind of helped. But when I understood that the real problem was the trying to get rid of fear, then I understood metta bhavana more. Metta bhavana was the welcoming of that which I did not want in my mind. It was a much deeper understanding of metta. And it was about this situation, these khandhas, this suffering that was going on. And so then I began to really see how the fearfulness of giving talks or things like that just began to cease and began to fade away. Because I was very self-conscious. I hated going to airports. If you really want to feel self-conscious, put on a brown bed sheet and walk through an airport. Because that's the feeling that I had. They're all looking at me. Yes, they're all looking at you. So I felt very self-conscious. So then I just, I'd sit down in some lounge and I thought, the self-consciousness feels this way. And it was very uncomfortable. But what could I do? Other monks, they didn't feel that. But there it was. But it was actually a very good thing. It's a very good thing, because now is witnessing the whole sense of ego that was in this being, sense of self, and the thoughts that came from that, and addressing it directly with the Four Noble Truths. What's the problem? It's the fear. No. It's the desire not to have the fear. And what that leads me to is that quite often we don't let things cease. Something unpleasant arises in the mind or difficult arises in the mind. And rather than just trusting in awareness, we try to fix it. We try to understand it. We try to figure it out. We try to analyze it like we do a bank balance or these kinds of things. We try to fix it, to get it right, to get the numbers right. But this is different. Once you have the witnessing posture and you know it as a khandha, as a sankhara, not you, that's where you have to fix it. That it's not me, not mine. And when I knew fear as fear, then it was not me, not mine. It was an energy in nature. When I got caught in the thinking about it, what am I going to say and what am I going to do? And do they like me? Do they not like me? That's attachment, preoccupation. But once I understood that, and I had to re-understand that again and again and again a million times, but each time I understood that, then I had to trust in awareness. Trust in awareness, trust in awareness, trust. So that's what you want to get to in the puzzles of your own mind, in the places where the sense of self is very, very strong. You want to get to the place of witnessing. You have to understand that. If your mind is thinking I thoughts around it, you're not witnessing. You're identifying with it as me and mine. Once you get to that, and that's what we call letting go. Letting go of self-perception, self-view around the fear. That didn't mean the fear left. Because sometimes we think letting go means, I'll just let go and land. It doesn't work that way. Letting go is non-attachment to the self-identity with the body-mind situation. That's very important. So once you get there, then you trust in awareness. So Lompo Sumedho's constant, suggestion to us these last few years, last 50 years, it's like this. Now that's very, very profound if you have the right understanding about it. It's not dismissive, because it's a kind of commonplace too. Life is as it is, sure, but in silent witnessing, you really trust in awareness. Trust in awareness and know the way it is. So the Four Noble Truths then, that the cessation of craving is synonymous with Nibbana. Now, you'd think, well, this fear doesn't feel like Nibbana. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like fear. Because Nibbana, or the unconditioned, is not an experience per se. It's the background. It's the silence. So I began to say, well, actually, I can silently witness an unpleasant feeling such as fear. There can be the silent witnessing. You see, both are operating. Samsara is operating in the way of conditionality, khandhas, but also the silent background is there. That was a relief. That was a huge relief. Then I realized, I don't have to fix this. I just have to remember the background. One way of looking at the Four Noble Truths is the conventional way. There is suffering, there's the cause, which is attachment to desire. There's the cessation of suffering, which is the abandonment of desire, and there's the path. And the path begins with right understanding. It gets translated as right view, but it's not intellectual. It's more visceral. The intellectual part helps you, but you've got to see yourself. Do you really understand why you suffer? And what the end of suffering is? You can't just rely on the books. This is where book knowledge can be a hindrance, actually, because the books are pointing to something. So you have to, why am I suffering? What is it? And then you observe. You observe, it's attachment to desire, and you get that insight. Another way of looking at the Four Noble Truths is the teaching from Lumpu Dun. You might have seen it floating around. It's a really lovely way of looking at the Four Noble Truths. So he's contemporary Ajahn Chah, I think, and he didn't live in a forest monastery. He's Thai monk, Thai great master, But he lived in a really, really busy monastery in one of the holy sites of Thailand, one of the holy stupas. So he reformulated it. He said the mind going outside is the cause. The result of the mind going outside is suffering. The mind knowing the mind is the path. The result of the mind knowing the mind is the end of suffering. So switched 1 and 2 to 2 and 1. The mind going outside is the cause. So, and this is in relation to suffering. When I go out to the snipe, it doesn't mean I'm suffering. I could be fully aware of it. But when my mind goes out into the emotional content that I'm experiencing, I get preoccupied with it. So if I'm very, very judgmental, and I come in and I see that, oh, the shoes aren't lined up perfectly. Let's say I'm a Zen monk. I'm a Zen, and I look at the shoes, they're crooked. Lazy meditators, lazy people, sloppy outfit. So I come in and I sit there, sloppy. The mind going outside. Where's it going outside? It's going out to a perception, a judgment, right? And then there's a preoccupation with this. Oh, foolish people, foolish. It's already one day and they're falling apart. Or something like that. Right? But what's going on? The mind is preoccupied with the khandhas. Then I say to myself, oh, but you've been a bhikkhu 50 years. You have to be more forgiving. You must be more forgiving. May they be well, may they be well. It's the same problem. It's preoccupation. Right? But then there's the awakening. So, oh, judgment feels this way. It feels this way. Ah, you have the background. So the mind going out is the cause. The result of the mind going out is suffering. It's just a perception. It's just the mind knowing the mind. Oh, life feels this way. The mind knowing the mind is the path. The result of the mind knowing the mind is the end of suffering. So in the midst of that construct of habit, of judgment, the attachment, the preoccupation is the mind going outside. Then the remembering, no, it feels this way, judgment feels this way, you're home again, stay a while. And that's the path. Knowing that is the path. You're not out into the khandhas. You're here. And then you know that's the end of suffering. A very beautiful, beautiful model. So with me, with fear, I hadn't come across that teaching when I was so immersed in, I don't experience much fear now, but in those days I hadn't come across this, but you could see how that condition, it would preoccupy my attention. And then fear is this way, non-preoccupation. Yeah? So as we're meditating, I suggest you look at that, try to see that understanding, where the problem is, and see if you can get a sense of the background. Use space, use this, whatever you want. Like in this room, just notice the space. It's the background, the silence, the space. And then the foreground will be all your thinking. Analyzing past and future. And it's very hard not to be preoccupied with the foreground. It's very hard. It's not an easy path. And what works is just really understanding what the awakened mind is and trusting in that. Constantly awakening, it's like this. I don't want to be here, I want to be here, it's great, it's not great, it doesn't matter. It's like this. And then listening to that silence afterwards, that's the background. And then stay a while. Stay a while there. And notice how difficult that is. Oh yeah, it's like this. Blah, 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 blah. And you're reborn again as Viradhammo, as Ben, as whoever you want to get reborn as. And then, it's like this. Rebirth is like that. Blah, 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 blah. So you have to do it a lot. But it doesn't come from desire. It comes from insight. It comes from understanding. Okay? I think that's sufficient to ponder. Finish the talk there, yeah.
Sadhu.
Well, we have another routine. listen to him.
Hannamayang Dhammakataya sadhu karanga dhammase